I felt really alone, not knowing anyone else who had a special needs sibling. And if my story can help someone else out there feel not alone, that's all I really want.
Meet Alicia Meneses Maples.
You're here. I am so happy to see you.
Her TEDx talk has set a global viral trend about glass children. She's helped millions of hurting glass children around the world feel seen. You've seen her on NBC, CNN.com, and countless online articles. Here is your host, Alicia Meneses Maples.
Welcome to the I See Glass Children podcast. This is the place where we boldly dig into all things related to the glass child experience. We own our stories without shame, we pursue our healing, and we claim our value independent of others' thoughts, feelings, or expectations. Because you are important to me, I have to give you a warning. Some of the things you hear on the I See Glass Children podcast may be triggering for you, especially if you experience childhood trauma and neglect. And while I will occasionally have mental health professionals as special guests, I am not a licensed therapist, and this podcast is never meant to be a substitute for a supportive and healing relationship with a professional counselor. I'm your host, Alicia Meneses Maples. I am a glass child, and I see you. Emily Wyler is a 30-something glass child from the United States who reached out to be interviewed with a simple, heartfelt reason. I felt really alone, not knowing anyone with a special needs sibling, and if my story can help someone else out there not feel alone, that's all I want. This is Emily's story. You'll hear how, at just 4 years old, she coped with the trauma of nearly losing her baby sister, 7 surgeries in 18 months, and how no one explained, comforted, or held space for her fear. You'll hear how she found one safe haven, only to have it ripped away from her when her parents ignored her desperate pleas. You'll hear how that one decision didn't just ruin a childhood dream, it shattered the only space where Emily felt seen, autonomous, and safe. From childhood trauma to adult relationships, grief to advice for parents, Emily opens up with honesty, vulnerability, and wisdom. This is a story about what happens when the good child is left to carry it all. Welcome to the I See Glass Children podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the I See Glass Children podcast. I am Alicia Meneses Maples, and with us today is the fabulous Emily Wyler. Thank you for being with us, Emily.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Why did you want to do this podcast?
I really just wanted an opportunity to share my story and the experiences I had growing up. I felt really alone, not knowing anyone else who had a special needs sibling. And if my story can help someone else out there feel not alone, that's all I really want.
That's so great. Emily, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Emily Wyler. I'm 32 years old. I currently reside in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the States. My special needs sibling is my sister. She is about 14 months younger than me. So that in and of itself presented its own challenges because we were so close in age that we always just got lumped together as a unit.
That is really close in age. So tell us a little bit about your sister, her diagnoses, behaviors. And the reason that I ask that question that way is for a lot of the adult glass children that I talk to, not everyone has had the benefit of a diagnosis for their siblings. Sometimes it's just behaviors.
Yep, I would say I fall halfway into that category. I think I was about 4 years old, so my sister was 2 or 3. Um, she started having symptoms. She was very sick. My parents had to take her to the hospital. It turns out she had ulcerative colitis that was so bad that her whole colon had to be removed.
Mm.
Um, and the doctors had to perform multiple surgeries. She was in and out of the hospital. I was 4 or 5 years old. I had no understanding of what was happening, why mommy wasn't home, why daddy wasn't home. Um, and to top it all off, I also have a younger brother who's about 3.5 years younger than me. So he was a newborn when all of this started.
Goodness.
So it was really hard. So dad was busy working full time to try to help provide for the family, pay the bills, hospital bills expensive. My mom staying with my sister, obviously. So luckily we had grandparents and other family members to step up and watch after my brother who was a newborn and who I was still less than 5, but it was just really tough. But luckily the doctors were able to reconstruct like her lower intestines. And now she, in terms of just the bowels, mostly lives a normal, healthy life in that regard. But it really like delayed her development a little bit in childhood, to the point where I guess the many years following when we were in elementary school, she definitely had emotional and developmental delays. But I think, and this was also the late 90s, early 2000s. So I think autism just there wasn't as much of an awareness for the signs and the symptoms back then. So my parents and we always knew something was a little, off with Samantha. But we always chalked it up to, well, she spent the better part of her young childhood in the hospital, so of course this kid is going to have developmental delays of some sorts and not be acting her age, because she went through something really traumatic very young. Um, It wasn't until she was 14 and I think I was 15 that we actually finally got an official diagnosis outside of the UC that she had Asperger's, which I think now is reclassified just as autism, high functioning. But yeah, it was really hard because for the longest time we knew she was weird, but we just didn't have words for it. We couldn't explain it. We would get weird looks in public or judgmental looks like, why can't you control your child? Why is she behaving this way? And I think it would have been easier if we had had the word autism back then, so we could let these people know that, hey, there's something different about this child. My experience is kind of twofold because we had to deal with all the medical
Yeah.
issues in the very beginning, and that was very traumatizing for me, especially I was such a young child. I was scared that she was going to die, that I was going to catch whatever she had. I didn't really understand what was going on, and the adults in my life were so overwhelmed that no one ever stopped to ask, is Emily okay? And, being a female and being the older sister, I was kind of just expected to be on my best behavior and look after my little brother and just kind of take care of things and take care of myself. And I tell people that I basically raised myself.
Emily, I want to dig into your experiences just a little bit more. So, how many years was your sister sick physically?
Um, I think I want to say she was in and out of the hospital over the course of maybe 18 months, at most 2 years. Um, but again, it's kind of hard for me to remember the details now because I was so young back then and I was just so angry and confused and didn't really understand what was going on.
Did your parents ever talk to you about what was happening with your sister?
Not really. I mean, I knew she had ulcerative colitis, but I didn't really know what that meant.
Those are big words for a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Right. How many surgeries did she have?
I think it was a total of 7 over the course of those 18 months or so. It was a lot of in and out of the hospital, hospital stays, grandparents picking me up from preschool. I have vivid memories of biting other children or hitting them with toys or taking a book and hitting a kid over the head with it because now looking back, I think I was just so angry. But at the time, I didn't realize this rage that I had. So I was just lashing out at the other children. And Of course, the teacher would tell my parents, and my parents were already so overwhelmed and frustrated that I wasn't being the perfect angel in preschool. So I used to get yelled at, spanked, and put in timeout, and got to spend a lot of time just alone in the room in timeout. So then it was kind of this vicious cycle because then I'd go back to preschool, even more angry. I would get in trouble again. So it'd be rinse, cycle, repeat.
Before we move on, I want to slow this down for a minute, especially for the parents and the teachers who are listening. Emily was 4 years old. 4. Let's be honest. What 4-year-old is perfectly behaved? I don't know any. Now, add to that, her baby sister had 7 surgeries in 18 months. Emily didn't know if her sister was going to die. No one explained what was happening. No one held her when she cried. No one helped her name the fear, the anger, the confusion she was feeling. So she acted out because that's what scared, hurting 4-year-old children do. And instead of being comforted, she was punished, isolated, and shamed. You want to help a glass child? Be the adult who doesn't punish the pain, who sees it for what it is. Tell them you're allowed to feel big feelings. You're allowed to talk to me. Be the one who listens, who stays, who helps them carry what's too heavy for them to hold alone. It's a very frightening thing when someone that you love, in your case, your sister, in my case, my youngest brother, David, is so sick and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't have any control over it. You see the worry and the concern and the exhaustion and everything on your parents' faces, and you don't know what to do and you don't understand what is going on. And you see your sibling who you love hurting and in pain. It is really difficult for me to describe what that's like. That fear, the worry, the hurt. And another part for me was not knowing when it was going to end. Like it felt like, as a child, it felt like it was just going to go on forever and ever.
Hmm.
Fortunately for our family, it ended when David died, which was really tragic. So I'm sharing those things because I really want the audience to understand that if you think about what it would feel like for you, audience member, today to find out that your toddler had to have 7 surgeries in 18 months. Just like think about how much that would freak you out, that would do to you mentally and emotionally. And then I want you to put yourself in the body of a 4-year-old who sees everything that's happening, hears everything that's happening, and doesn't have the tools or the words to understand or explain.
I did not have the vocabulary. And it wasn't until much later when I started going to a therapist that I explained the lashing out behavior that she was the one who was like, you were angry. Like, of course you were going to lash out.
Anger is it's a normal emotion. It's a feeling that all of us have at different times. And as a child, of course you were angry. You were in an untenable situation. You were scared, you were worried, and you didn't have your mom and dad around. Why, like to me, why wouldn't you be angry? Of course you were angry. And when we're that young, we don't have the words. All we have are behaviors to demonstrate how we're feeling. And I wish for young Emily that there had been someone around who could see the reasons behind your behavior.
Yeah, I just wish someone would have asked if I was okay or recognized that I was lashing out in preschool and be like, why, instead of just punishing me.
I hope
And I don't
everybody,
want to blame my parents because, I mean, they were dealt a terrible hand. No one asked for this, and they were just in survival mode. They were just trying to do the best that they could with what they had at the time.
and the important thing, I think, not the important thing, all of it's important. One thing that I want to highlight for the people who are listening is what you said. You just said, I wish that someone had asked me if I was okay. And this is part of what I want the world to understand is it doesn't take a lot to make a difference in the life of a glass child. Seeing them is huge. Talking to them, asking them how they are, like asking little Emily, instead of asking, how is your sister and how are your parents? Right? Because did you hear that a lot?
Yeah, I didn't have an identity outside of my sister and my parents.
Exactly, exactly. So instead of saying to little Emily, how are your parents? How is your sister? To look at little Emily and say, Emily, how are you? How would that have helped you?
I think it just would have given me the space to stop and question and think, well, how am I feeling? Because I too was in survival mode and I just never had the opportunity to stop and process, not until much later into adulthood, how I was feeling at the time. Even now, it's very hard for me to step foot into a hospital. It brings back a lot of those emotions. I actually had a friend who was sick in the hospital about a year or two ago, and I didn't go and visit her because it's just so hard for me to step foot into that environment because it brings back up all those emotions. And thank God she ended up being fine, but um, that's one of the biggest things that's also just been hard is I didn't have any friends growing up who were in a similar situation who even understood remotely what I was dealing with, and even how it still affects me into adulthood today.
I want to tell you that I understand some of what you're going through, especially about the hospital part. For me, the same thing that you described. My dad was working, or he was taking care of my second youngest brother, Mario, who was born in the 70s and had autism, but we didn't know it because we didn't know what it was. So, dad was working. He was working 4 jobs to pay medical bills and taking care of Mario. And my mom was with David in the hospital. He spent the majority of his life in the hospital. For me, if I wanted to get out of the craziness that was my home, I had to go to the hospital to be with my mom and to be with David. And I saw so many things that a child should never be exposed to, and was tasked with so many things that a child should not have as a responsibility. And like you, to this day, I'm 55 years old. Hospitals are just, I'd rather go to like a scary haunted house than go to a hospital. It's that triggering for me. The noises, the beeping of the heart,
Hmm.
the every single bit of it is just, it's awful for me.
I recently came across the term waiting room child, um, and I wish I had that term many years ago because I didn't even realize that that was me.
Oh. So you didn't have any friends back then who understood, but you have one now who understands. Yeah. Part of the, we say part of the club that you never want to join, right?
Yeah.
You had this as a kind of foundational experience for your development as a child. And then you are growing up and developing, and your sister continues to have issues. So is there a particular memory that strikes you from I don't know, preteen or teen years that is related to her Asperger's or now what's called high functioning autism?
It's really hard to pinpoint one specific memory, but just what life was like. So I mentioned we were 14 months apart. So what did that mean? We were in school together, elementary school, middle school, except those occasional years where the schools were broken up. And I got to be, I guess, free of her, but kids are cruel. Um, I was bullied a lot in elementary school and middle school because not even anything I did or said, or I was bullied because I was the weird girl sister, and everyone knew who my sister was, and everyone knew she was weird, and they could pick up on it. And we didn't have the term for it back then that we do now. So it was really hard. It was really hard going to school, being bullied myself. It was even harder watching her be bullied, someone that I loved, and I didn't know how to go about making it better. And especially in middle school, I just so desperately wanted to blend in. I just wanted to be like every other kid. I wanted to be even invisible. Um, I didn't want to be known as the weird girl sister.
So when these things were happening at school, how did that translate to after school in your home environment?
I think I was really resentful that I just didn't. I was just felt like I had this dark cloud over my head that was my sister, that I wasn't free to be who I was. I think I was very shy as a child, and I didn't really like branch out until college. And that's when I was able to make a lot of friends because no one knew who my sister was. It was a clean slate. And now I look back and wonder, was I naturally shy or was it just the circumstances? And even back to the bullying, it was really hard because I knew bullying was wrong and I wanted to stick up for her and stand up for her, but I also didn't want to be bullied even more and I just wanted to fit in. So I was always caught between a rock and a hard place of sticking my neck out and standing up for my sister and then risk being bullied even more so myself or just watching it. And I'm even to this day like laden with so much guilt because I'm like I could have been a better sister. I could have stood up for her more.
If it's okay with you, Emily, I want to speak some truth over you. Okay. You were a child. You were a child. You did not have a support system in place to help you through those situations. You didn't have people that were guiding you, giving you advice. You didn't have people that were standing up for you. You are giving grace to your parents, and I would love it if you gave grace to yourself.
That's something I really struggle with. I'm so hard on myself. I'm such a perfectionist. I have to be perfect all the time, work really hard, especially in school. I had to be on my best behavior. I had to be that straight A student because my sister was always in trouble or such a handful at school.
That perfectionism, tell me again where that came from.
Um, I I guess it was internal. I just saw the chaos happening around me, and the only like rewards I would get from my parents or positive attention would be, oh, Emily got 100 on a test or an A in school. Like, she's great. Like, she's so smart. She's doing great. I got straight A's. I worked really hard. I took a whole bunch of AP classes. I got a master's in biomedical engineering. And through school and my academic achievements, that was the only way I ever got that kind of positive validation.
So, what you're describing is just one of the classic hallmarks of growing up as a glass child. And it's one of the things that makes it so difficult for the world to understand that we're not okay because we look like we're great. Typically, we are extremely successful in what we do. The only caveats are when there is a maladaptive behavior like addiction to drugs or to alcohol or something like that. And that kind of tends to sideline us. But for the most part, with those exceptions, we are extremely successful, highly driven, excellent at what we do. And so the world looks at us and sees someone that looks like they have it all together. We're smart, we're also empathetic, we have all these things. But the reality is, until we begin the healing journey, what's happening to us, it's a trauma response. It's a drive to be perfect coming from trauma. It's a drive to be successful coming from trauma.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that until I was an adult. And I still have these pervasive behaviors in my adulthood, like being really hard on myself, being a perfectionist. I just have so many memories of my parents saying, "Oh, Emily's fine. Like, she gets great grades. She's well behaved. She can take care of herself." And that was all true. But it would have been nice to have, for once, felt like I was being taken care of. And I think, unfortunately, throughout my 20s and late teens, that led me to maybe date some of the wrong people that I shouldn't have, stay in relationships longer than I should have, because I was so used to taking care of other people that that was what I knew. So even if I was in a relationship where I wasn't being treated right, I saw them as someone that I needed to take care of and fix because that was comfortable to me and that's what I was used to.
I want everybody to listen to what Emily just said, because this is where we're starting the transition into what happens to us as children, how that turns into behaviors for us as adults that can lead to actually a lot of danger in some cases. So if we are raised and trained to believe that our job is to take care of everybody else in the house, which, by the way, that is a global theme with glass children. Sometimes it's because somebody says, "Hey, Alicia, you need to be a good girl and not cause any problems for your parents because they have a lot going on in their lives." And sometimes it's our parents who say those things, but more often than not, it's coming from inside us because we love our family, we see the chaos, and we don't want to make it worse. And then behaving well, as you said, gets reinforced. So here's what happens is we learn that our job and our value and our worth are tied to how well we take care of others. We also learn that our feelings and our needs are less important than everybody else's. And sometimes we learn that our feelings and our needs are not important at all. On top of that, third complication, we are craving validation. So you take those three things and you put them into a young adult, and it gets us into trouble in relationships because our danger button, so to speak, gets a little bit broken, and we can't recognize that the person that we're with is not somebody that we should be helping or trying to fix or make better, that they're in fact very toxic and some cases even dangerous. You were fulfilling your training.
Training I didn't even know I was receiving. I just instinctively did it. My mom told me a story about how my she had to take my brother to the hospital like at midnight. He had a tonsillectomy and there was a complication where he was hemorrhaging blood. And of course, even though he ended up being okay and coming back the next morning, but that triggered so many feelings and memories for me from when my sister was in the hospital. My mom said she came back from the hospital, and when she came home, my sister was reading to me. I was having her read to me. So my mom used to sit down with us to help teach us how to read and have us read to her. And no one asked me to do this. I don't even remember doing it, but I just instinctively did it and assumed that role.
What triggered you saying, I need to get some help?
Um, it's really hard. I don't know if there's any one instance that really triggered that. I sometime in late middle school, early high school, I was definitely depressed. I just didn't know it at the time. And my parents took me to a therapist because I was depressed. They took me to my sister's therapist, which I later on, not until college, when I was seeing a new therapist, realized that apparently you're not supposed to be seeing the same therapist as another family member. But again, none of this was intentional. I just think my parents didn't know what they were doing. And yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't super helpful. I feel like it really wasn't until college and then later on post college, like when I really got to be removed from the household and removed from the situation, that I was able to kind of get a clearer picture of and start to process everything that I went through. I'm still processing it. I'm still in therapy now. It's been a long journey, but uh, I don't know. I guess I'm hopeful for the future. I'd also like to point out that I am getting married in September. So even though I did maybe date the wrong people in my 20s, I have the best, most supportive partner now. So I just wanted to mention that, make sure that didn't get lost.
Congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Awesome. I would love it if you could share what some of the more profound learning moments were for you in therapy.
Um, the word impact. So in talking to my therapist and describing some of these things I went through, like I always talked about it logically. Well, yes, we were dealt a terrible hand. My parents did the best that they could do, but then my therapist would stop me and be like, the piece that's missing here is the impact. What did that have on you? What was the impact on you? And I realized I never once stopped to question myself and be like, well, what impact did this have on me? It's really tough because I I sometimes mourn the life that I could have had if I didn't have my sister, as hard as it is to say that, and as much as I love her. I feel like my identity is so intertwined into her and her struggles and just taking care of the family. Um, so while there were a lot of challenges, I would like to say that there were some positive impacts in that I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for her. I wouldn't be an empathetic person, caring for others. My mom has said she's noticed leadership qualities in me and like I know how to take charge. And again, I think that's just because of the environment that I grew up in. Really hard and a very unique experience that again, it's just hard when I'm talking to some of my close friends and they listen, but unless you live it, you just don't understand. And what's extra difficult right now, actually, is I'm of that age where a lot of my friends are getting married and starting to have kids. And I think I have a little bit of jealousy and resentment in that department because I see them just plunging into adult life, carefree, thinking, oh, we're just going to have kids and everything's going to be great. And I just have such a different perspective, and I don't have that. I'm terrified to have my own children. I don't know if I want to have children because I saw what happens when it doesn't go right. I saw how hard it was on my parents, and I don't think I could handle a child like my sister after growing up in that environment. Aside from the fact that I am genetically more at risk of having an autistic child, and unfortunately, there's just no testing for autism during pregnancy. So that terrifies me. And I guess I am a little jealous that that I do have these extra things to think about and I can't just be carefree and be like, yes, I'm getting married. I'm excited. I'm going to have kids and start my own family.
Many glass children elect not to have children of their own. And some people would say that's sad. Some people would say that's good. Everybody has an opinion about this. Everybody has an opinion. Even within families, everybody has an opinion about it. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because that is another residual effect of going through the things that we went through is we have a completely different reality than our peers about what can happen. And they have a blissful ignorance of things they don't know can happen. And so you're right, they're able to, you described it as plunge. I think that's a great description. They can just plunge into it really without any cares about what the future could hold. Um, I feel you. I feel you on that. And I elected not to have children. In fact, I knew at the age of 9 that I was not going to have children. There was just too much that was happening. Like to our audience, I mean, think about that. What's happening in somebody's home that at 9 years of age, they have made the decision that they're not going to be a mother? Like that should say something. So you're not alone. You're not alone in that journey either.
I feel like I already had to be a mother. I didn't get to have a childhood, and that's another reason why I'm terrified to have children because I didn't get to be one, and I'm terrified that I can't relate to them. And if I have my own, I'm like, what am I going to continue these behaviors? What am I going to do to them? How am I going to screw them up? Even if everything does turn out perfect.
You just pulled the words right out of my mouth. I was so afraid, aside from the fact that I would have a child that would be terminally ill and die, that I was just going to completely screw my kids up because I had so much unresolved stuff myself. I didn't want to pass my unhealed trauma on to another generation. And at the same time, here I am and I'm 55 and my friends are having grandchildren. My peers are having grandchildren and I'm so happy for them. I'm thrilled for them. And then there's this little part of me that still, it hurts. So
Yeah. I think
I,
my parents are feeling that now too. It's like their peers are starting to become grandparents, and I think they're slowly starting to realize that that may never be in the cards for them.
and parents, one of the worst things that you can do is push your kids to have grandkids. Like you've got to understand and respect your glass child's experience. And if they decide that they're not going to have children, you have to learn to be okay with that. Pushing them, guilting them, shaming them, saying things like, how can you deprive me of being a grandparent? I mean, it's just, that's not okay. You weren't able to give what we needed when we were kids, but you can today as adults and be supportive in the decisions that we make about whether we're going to have children or not.
Yeah, and I'm really lucky in the fact that my parents don't pressure me to have children and they do support my decision either way. So I'm really thankful for that.
I'm so glad. That's awesome that they do. Is there anything that you would like to share that I haven't asked about yet?
Touching more upon my experiences in like elementary school, middle school.
I have to stop us again because we need to talk about something that we don't talk about enough, and that's enmeshment. Enmeshment. In most families, especially in Western culture, a parent's job is to guide their child towards independence to help them grow into a confident, autonomous adult. But in high needs families, that gets flipped. Instead of nurturing independence, parents can unintentionally foster enmeshment, where the typical sibling becomes emotionally entangled, overly responsible, or expected to sacrifice for the high needs child. And as you're about to hear, this dynamic had devastating effects on Emily. She wasn't allowed to have something just for herself, not even a place to breathe, to grow, to just be Emily. Parents, when you take away a child's safe space in the name of fairness, you're not protecting the family. You're breaking the one child who thought they could finally exhale.
I wanted to mention earlier that because we were so close in age and I saw her at school, that my experience was unique from everyone else in my family because during the day, um, Everyone else got a break from my sister. My dad was at work, my mom was at home, my brother was either at home with my mom or so much younger, he was in a different part of the school. I was the only one who 24/7 almost had to see and deal with my sister. And that really took a toll that I don't think my parents or my brother really understand. Um, and then, so my only escape really was the summers. I used to go to a summer day camp every year, and that was the only place where that was my place. I made a ton of friends there. I had such a good time. My sister didn't go to this camp, well, at least initially. And I was just so happy to be there, and I looked forward to it every summer. And then, unfortunately, in middle school, almost towards high school, I aged out of the camp, and I knew I wanted to come back and be a counselor. This was a dream I had had my entire childhood. I told my parents, like, I love this camp and I want to be a counselor here one day. So I was in this weird age gap where I was too old to be a camper, but not old enough yet to be a counselor. So what did my parents do? They saw the great experience that I had at this summer camp, and they were like, why don't we send Samantha there? I begged and pleaded not to have them send her there. That was my place. That was my safe space. And I knew I wanted to go back. And if she went there, there were still younger kids who knew me, the other counselors who knew me, they would all then know who my sister was, and I would have that dark cloud over my head again. But of course, they thought, well, Emily had such a great experience there. Like maybe Samantha will have a great experience there. And we just got lumped together so much between the gender and the age. We were different people. Just because I had a good experience there doesn't mean she was going to have a good experience there. And I don't really need to go into the details, but you won't be shocked to hear she didn't have a great experience there. She actually ended up getting kicked out of the camp partway through the summer. And I won't say that that's all her and my parents' fault. I don't think the camp had the appropriate staff training to handle a child like her. And so that was also on them, which was really unfortunate. But guess who basically was blacklisted and could never go back and be a counselor at this camp? So the one dream I had throughout my entire childhood vanished, even though I begged and pleaded for my parents not to send her there. And that still, like, into my adulthood, like, affects me today. It hurt me so badly.
And I think that this story is a good opportunity to highlight the importance of parents listening to their glass children. It's really challenging for us to express our emotions and our opinions in healthy ways. It's hard for us to say there's something that we want because we feel very selfish when we do that, because we believe that we're supposed to set aside everything about ourselves for the sake of the family and for you and for our siblings. And so when we actually have the courage to say to you, this is what we want, this is what we need, it's really important that you listen to us. Here you are, how many years later, and it's still affected you. The last thing that I would like to ask you, Emily, is if you had the opportunity to talk to parents who have a high needs child and other children that are not high needs, what advice would you give them?
Um, Spend time, one-on-one time with your child that's not high needs, because I think that's the one thing I crave so badly was just that parental attention. And I feel like it made me seek out attention in other ways that weren't necessarily healthy because I wasn't getting it at home. And I think developing those one-on-one relationships are really important. And I just wish I had more memories of spending that one-on-one time with my parents and that quality time.
What advice or what do you want to say? Like right now, there are adult glass children all over the world that are listening to you, Emily. What do you want them to know?
It gets better,
Mm.
but it only gets better when you start taking care of yourself, putting yourself first, going to therapy. If you can, get out of the house. I went to college at 18 and I never looked back. I never moved back home. I had a lot of friends who boomeranged back home after college, but I knew that just really feasibly wasn't an option for me. Um, and just being out of that environment um, has just given me so much more strength and the ability to like reflect and heal. But it only gets better if you start putting yourself first and taking care of yourself and trying to remove yourself from that environment as much as possible.
I love that. I'm going to be devil's advocate for a second, though. But isn't it selfish for me to go out on my own and to leave my family behind? I mean, my parents have so much to deal with, Emily.
But you not being there won't change that. My sister's still at home. She's 30, about to turn 31. My parents are still taking care of her, and me being there doesn't change that. And unfortunately, right now, the thing I'm most terrified about is what happens when they die. So again, I mentioned before, my friends are kind of carefree and taking that plunge into adulthood, starting their next generation. And I'm over here terrified that I'm going to have to be some sort of caregiver to my sister for the rest of my life, a burden I never asked for. And that's something I also want to say to these parents is don't assume and don't put that burden on your healthy child because they deserve to live their own life too, and they never asked for this. We actually had a family friend pass suddenly of a heart attack at 54, like 2 or 3 years ago. It was very sad and tragic. And that's actually what started having me realize my own parents' immortality. And I panicked and I was like, they could die in a car crash tomorrow. What would happen to my sister? I can't take her in emotionally, mentally, physically, financially. I just don't have that capacity to take her in. She is my mom's full-time job. My mom never went back to work. I work a technical, hard, full-time job.
Anything else you'd like to share before we end?
I guess I just want to thank you for giving me the voice and the platform to talk about these experiences. I've only recently started opening up about them because it was really difficult for me to process, especially not having a lot of people in my life who could kind of understand what I was going through. I've recently started opening up to friends more, and I think that's helped as well. Recently bonded with a friend whose sibling struggles with addiction. So even though it's not the same type of exact issues, there were a lot of similarities that we were dealing with in talking about our parents' planning for the next chapters. So, um, yeah, so even if people don't exactly know what you're going through, it sometimes does help to open up and see if people have kind of an adjacent situation and have some advice.
Well, you are welcome. I want to say thank you to you for really, this is a courageous thing to do, to come on camera and to tell your story to the world because the world is going to be listening to this and to dig into old memories. That is not an easy thing. And I am so grateful that you had the courage and the desire to be a part of this because you're telling your story, Emily, is going to make a difference in other people's lives. It's going to help other glass children know they're not alone. I think it's going to inform mental health professionals about what to look for and be aware of. And if parents will be open, I think that there are some lessons that parents can learn from your story. So thank you. I'm so grateful you were here today.
Thank you.
Emily's story isn't just about one heartbreaking moment, it's about a pattern, a lifetime of being told quietly and overtly, your needs come second. She was the sister who had to be okay, the kid who was bullied because classmates thought her sister was weird, the young woman who carried confusion into her romantic relationships, unsure if it was safe for her to care. And yet, here she is, offering not just her pain, but also her wisdom. Emily shares powerful advice for fellow glass children, especially those wrestling with guilt over leaving home or trying to build lives of their own. She speaks directly to the heart of what so many glass children need to hear, that it's okay to protect your peace. It's okay to set boundaries, and it's okay to want a life that belongs to you. Emily took her pain and turned it into a message for every glass child who's ever begged to be seen and for every adult who wants to do better. When a glass child tells you what they need, listen. When they ask for space, honor it. When they plead to protect something that is just theirs, don't make them share it in the name of fairness, because sometimes that one thing is the only thing keeping them afloat. Emily's voice is gentle but clear. You don't have to lose yourself to love your family. You're allowed to take up space, and you're allowed to find joy that is yours alone. How are you feeling? Remember, if you're struggling, reach out to a mental health professional. You do not have to do this alone. Thank you for being with me today, and don't forget to share this episode with your bestie, your therapist, your teachers, your minister. Sharing is caring, and hearing is healing. This is the I See Glass Children podcast. I'm Alicia Meneses Maples, and I see you. God sees you, and Jesus loves you.